actually run 3 companies. The most obvious one is kind of behind me. I'm the CEO and founder of Megan Killion Consulting, which is a sales and marketing agency. We do pretty much everything that's sales and marketing. We'll do job hunting, placement, sales training. I'm really focused on top of funnel when it comes to sales. Although I have full life cycle sales experience, I know that my strength is at the top of the funnel. And then everything marketing, SEO, lead gen, digital marketing, paper, print, absolutely everything. I have someone in my network that does everything that is marketing. So my number one product is outsourced marketing packages, which is like, think of me as your CMO and my team as a fully fleshed out marketing team where you don't have to hire or pay benefits or any of that. We typically work with like early-ish stage tech startups that are still entrepreneurial in nature, smaller headcount, don't have a marketing department of their own. I usually exit either when they grow naturally or organically, or when they finish their fundraising and are looking to hire their marketing team in-house. I'll help hire those people, and then I'm out. I also run a real estate business that is short-term rentals and long-term rentals that I kind of fell into because I inherited a house up north and then quickly learned that real estate investment is a great way for long-term kind of stable income. And then the newest and kind of like the most exciting from my perspective is a startup called Coven Cloud, which is a social media platform built by spiritualists for spiritualists. So our kind of like our tagline is that spiritual nomads wander no longer, that you found a home. So for us, like our leadership team is mostly like pagan and witchy, people who kind of didn't find a spiritual home in the good old fashioned brick and mortar type of religious institutions. And it came about from me being like, I feel like I've never found a community that was right for me when it came to my spiritual growth, and I wanted to create it. And as soon as I did, everything aligned in my life. Like everything just kind of came together and started making sense. So as you can probably guess, as the CEO of 3 different companies, time management is like absolutely crucial to my functioning in any capacity whatsoever. My short-term rental business, at this point, it's the off season. So my short-term rentals on Cape Cod, I have 2 rentals. One is long-term, one is short-term. And this time of year, it's slow. I might get like a couple guests in over the winter, but it's not super busy. And those people are usually pretty laid back. It's a cheaper vacation in the off season. And it's usually like chiller people are coming to the Cape in the winter. During the summertime, it's insane, and I have to find a lot more time for it than I do right now. So it pretty much runs itself. I have a good crew of people. I've got a tenant that lives up there, and so he'll help with like, if things come up in the moment, he acts kind of like a property manager. And then I have my kind of like jack of all trades guy, handyman that comes in and does things, and I have a staff of housekeepers that'll come and do turnovers. That part, pretty easy. I usually only spend maybe 1 or 2 hours a week checking up on that, making sure it's okay. And the marketing I've outsourced to my marketing people. So I don't even look at our marketing anymore on that. I'm just like, guys, it's running cool. It's like 1 post a week, no big deal. And we've kind of automated the sign up if somebody makes a reservation. That one's not too much to handle. Megan Killion Consulting is what I consider to be like my day job. That's what I'm working on during the day. Time for that is very variable. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday are my long days where I work pretty much from like 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., take a short break for dinner with my family, maybe help with bedtime. And then I'm back to work by 8:30 working on Coven Cloud. And then Coven Cloud's my evenings. I occasionally set aside time for Coven Cloud. So like today is a Coven Cloud day because our Kickstarter is launching. But normally during like business working hours, I'm very much just like checking up on it, but it's not like the focus of my work. Megan Killion Consulting is where I really like block time for specific tasks. And I use Reclaim for a lot of that. So like, and I use Reclaim to balance like my personal life and my work life. I have 4 kids. So we have a whole chart system. I have whiteboards everywhere. Like I have a whiteboard in my office. It's a calendar that tells me what I'm doing all day, every day. That information stays on my calendar in my office, as well as my like agenda planner, which isn't going to show up very well, but this guy, that I have a goals whiteboard that's over here that tells me where I am for progress towards revenue goals. And then I have like a manifestation board over here that is kind of the things that I'm hoping for my company, for myself, for my family, for my friends. And then in our landing, we have a whiteboard that does everybody's chores. And so we have a chore chart that is color coordinated as to who owns what task. We used to have a rotating one that was like, we would change every week who's responsible for what, but we found that to be like too much. So now it's just every week, everybody has the same chores, and we sat down, had a family meeting, and really hashed out like which things were the most draining for which people. Unfortunately, there are 2 things that we all agree are terrible, which is dishes and laundry. But other than that, pretty much all of our stuff, like I don't mind vacuuming at all. I'll vacuum the whole house. I like put headphones on and listen to a podcast and vac. I do most of the cooking, but my husband, like I'll batch cook on Sundays, and then he'll heat it up Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, because I'm not really around for the prepping of dinner. And then Thursday night I cook. Friday night we go out on date night. Ultimately, like I schedule pretty much every second of every day, and then hold myself really accountable to where my time goes. When I was first figuring it out, I quit Cashfly a month and a half ago, 2 months ago. And when I first like switched things up, I got out a pad of paper and I kept it with me all the time. And I wrote down everything that I did. And I looked for the patterns of like, where is my time going? When is it going? What is most productive? And this had 2 purposes for me. One of which was to schedule, like put together a calendar that actually reflects where my time's going and how I can, when you block time, it's more productive than when you're just chaotically doing things. Oh, excuse me. And in the other half is figuring out which things give me energy and which things steal my energy. And so for me, it's not just about where your time goes, it's about how that time impacts you. So really like leaning into my own unique ability, which is a strategic coach thing, and focusing on the things that I'm good at, that fill me with energy, and that I'm constantly improving at, and outsourcing the stuff that isn't that, really made my time more productive. And coming to terms with the fact that we all have this predisposition to believe that other people are like us, right? And those tasks that we hate, everybody hates. For me, that's like processes, documentation. I hate that stuff. I would 1,000 times rather like record a walkthrough video than write down a process. Not everybody's like that. There are people who love processes, documentation, and operations. It took me a long time to get to the point where I'm like, just because I hate something doesn't mean that giving it to someone else is a burden. So finding those people and being like, what is it that you're passionate about that I can find that for you here in the org? And getting that flowing really well allowed me to have better control of my time. So when I made that list, I kind of like put a red X next to the things that I needed to get rid of, and then organize those by like patterns. Like, what is this? These X's are showing up a lot on things that are operational. So now like I'm prioritizing, that's my next big hire is going to be a sales and marketing operations specialist, because I hate that stuff. And then like a lot of stuff that we all hate, like checking email. Well, not everybody. That's not true. Not everybody. Most of us hate checking our email, like managing our calendar. So I'm actively seeking a PA, because I know that for me, like that's important. And in the beginning, Reclaim really filled a lot of those gaps. It was like kind of like a PA without having a PA, but I've outgrown it being its own system. Like I need somebody to work alongside Reclaim. And I also like, I'm really, really strict about my blocked time. And I didn't used to be. I used to be like, oh, well, the time's blocked for this, but I want to do this, so I'm going to do that. And now I really ask myself, like, well, why do I want to do that other thing? Is it a cop out? Like, I'm trying to avoid something I don't want to do. Am I procrastinating? Or is this really a higher priority than that? And if it is, we need to make a change to the calendar because this isn't really a priority. Let's get rid of it. Let's move it out, whatever. But I kind of like give myself a little slap on the wrist anytime I hit that delete button in Slack on a Reclaim task. Because I'm like, hey, I didn't do what I was supposed to do. Why? Mm-hmm. Did I not do that because it wasn't a priority and it never should have been on the calendar? Or it should have been further out? Or it really should have been like a task in Basecamp that I'll get to when I get to? And I think for me, the prioritizing has been the biggest challenge, but also the thing that gets the best results. When, like, if I sit down and I spend 2 hours of my week filtering things by priority, I will get that time back tenfold. Because that's where it really matters. It's like the do not do list is as important as the to-do list, right? Like I will not do these things because they're not a priority right now. And giving myself permission to take things off my plate and say, no, that has made all the difference in the world. I created Google accounts out of my Outlook because when I left Cashfly, I emailed Reclaim and was like, do you guys have an Outlook version? And they were like, we're working on it, but no. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'm creating Google accounts out of my Outlook just so I can have access to Google Calendar so I can use Reclaim, because like that's how dependent on it I became in the time that I was using it. Especially because there's the ability to do all the integrations with like Google Tasks, and I can zap that over to Basecamp. Mm-hmm. So like I have specific lists in Basecamp that are connected to my Google Tasks, which connects to Reclaim, so that like when I add in it's a two-way exchange of information. So it's like if I add it in Reclaim, it shows up in Basecamp. If I add it in Basecamp, it shows up in Reclaim. And that's been huge for me too, because I really need the ability to like organize things across tools, or I get wicked tool fatigue. But I'm really trying to move away from letting my email manage me. It used to act like my email was like my to-do list, and that did not work, did not scale. So I had to move away from that. And so now I'm in Basecamp and Slack all day, and I've found a way to like the Slack integration is native. That's super easy. You're just like, yes, connect me to my Slack. And your out of the box settings are perfect. No changes needed. Basecamp, I had to jump through some hoops. I have to turn on the Google Task and then zap it. But once you do it, test it a couple of times and make sure that it's pulling information from the right places, I really don't have to go into Reclaim. The best thing you can ever say about software is it's just working. You have to make sense of the chaos, and especially with the career revolution that's happening right now, you have to be more able to do that yourself than you ever have before. We kind of can't expect organizations to give us the blueprint anymore. We have to create our own. And so that's a task I really recommend almost to everybody. Write down where your time is going. It's also a really good negotiation tactic if you're looking to get a raise or a better title or any of that, to like actually be able to be like, well, this is where my time went, and I'm being paid for this 30% of it. So either I can stop doing these 70% other tasks, or you can pay me more or give me a better title or whatever it is that you're trying to position for. But also just being aware of where your time goes. I was really, really surprised the first time I did that activity with how much of my time I wasn't aware where it was going. And this is going to kind of go on like a tangent for a second, but when you do the math on the little pieces of time and you add it up over your lifetime, it can be a slap in the face. So like especially as women, because we've been sort of brainwashed by society to care about things that don't matter, like our hair and our makeup and shaving our legs. And when you add up that time over your lifetime and you think about what that really means for you, all of a sudden you're like, whew, I'm never shaving my legs again. Like, because that revelation came to me earlier in life, but when I did the task again, this time there were things that came up where I was like, oh wow, yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of my time that's going towards something that's not productive, that isn't making my life better or my kids' life better. And for me, like, I have almost a formulaic approach to how I spend my time, which is essentially, if you want my time, you're taking it from my kids.
Right.
So I don't know, ask them how much my time's worth. And that for me is like, that's been the best mindset for it. You know, they're a little bit older now. So my twins are 3, so they're in preschool. So there are times in the day where like, you're not taking time from my kids, you're taking time from work, which I'm way more lax about giving my time away. Which is why, like, during the middle of the day, I'm like, sure, let's do a video interview. And that is different because for me, that's just like, it's straight up a money equation. And although I'm very money motivated, there are things in life that matter to me more. When it's my kids' time, I'm very cognizant of like how you're taking that. And I think I mentioned earlier that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday are my long days, but I actually try to take Thursdays and Fridays off every week. Which if you would ask me like 4 years ago, 3 years ago, if that's even like humanly possible, I'd have been like, no way. But I almost always take my Fridays off. Like, that's consistently, I don't work Fridays. Thursdays are usually end up being a light day. Things come up, my team needs me, but it's not a client facing day. So like, you can't book time with me as my client on a Thursday unless you're going to pay me an astronomical amount of money and you're a priority client. Now, if my team is like, Megan, things are on fire, I'm like, okay, I'm coming. So it's like Thursday, Slack is on, Basecamp is on, I'm checking my notifications, but I'm usually off doing something with my kids or my husband, or I'm getting all of those, like, those things that pile up that aren't work when you're working done. Going to the bank, go to the grocery store, those things. And then, you know, on Fridays, my middle child is homeschooled, but he goes to a co-op Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And so on Fridays, we adventure school, which means we go on a field trip every single Friday. Science Center, we have Big Tree Park nearby, which is amazing. It's got the oldest tree in the world. So that's like really, that's my favorite day of the week. Every single week is Friday. And, you know, we have Disney passes. We live right down the street from Disney, we're like 30 minutes away. So work hard, play hard for sure. And my other big like time management thing is just outsource. Outsource things you never even thought to outsource. And people will be like, oh, I can't afford it. But I promise pretty much everyone that if you outsource the things that drain your energy, you will make that money back doing the things that don't. So like simple stuff, like when COVID started, I have an immune disorder. So I didn't go out in public at all for the first 6 months to a year. And so we started ordering groceries online. And once we're never giving it up. We're going to order groceries online forever. I will pay somebody else to get my groceries. I will tip well. And that's a whole person who's making their living on delivering people's groceries. And I get to not do that anymore. And when I did the math for that time, and I was like, holy shit, that's almost 6 hours a week I'm getting back. 6 hours, because I have 4 kids. We go grocery shopping at least 2 times a week, usually 3. The only grocery shopping I do is the farmer's market on Saturday morning. That's it. I don't go to the grocery store anymore. Done.
Yeah.
And when you do those things and you like do the math for like, well, what does 6 hours of my time mean for me when I can charge my clients $250, $300 an hour? That's a lot more money than I would have saved by doing those groceries myself. Really getting honest with yourself about the value of your time, however you do it, whether it's relating it to what you spend your time on by default. So for me, that's time with my kids, right? Like by default, if I have free time, it's spent with my family. So that's like the quotient for me. But it can be money. It can be like taking your dog for a walk. It could be playing video games, like whatever it is that you do, think of that as like a trade value and trade out the things that aren't worth it. A little while back, my friend Angela told me that there is no like moral high ground for doing things yourself.
Yeah.
That's not exactly how she put it, but basically that there's no like outsourcing is morally neutral. And it's probably one of the most powerful things I ever heard in my entire life. Because before that, I really felt like it made me a better person to do it myself, to work on it, to put to man labor in. It's not true. As a mom, it is my responsibility to make sure that my kids get nutritionally whole food, right? That is a moral obligation of mine. I brought them into this world. It's my job to feed them food that does not hurt their bodies. I don't have to shop for it. I don't have to cook it. Like, and I do the cooking most of the time because I enjoy it. I like, making meals for my family. I don't enjoy grocery shopping, so I don't do that anymore. Yeah. And I hold no value to it. Like when someone tells me that they don't cook for their family, I'm like, okay. And I used to be very judgmental about those things. Like, what do you mean? Like, of course you have to clean the house. Of course you have to cook meals. Of course you have to do these things. No, you don't. You have to put a roof over your kid's head. You have to make sure that they have a safe place to exist. You have to make sure that they're getting nutritionally whole food. You have to provide education for them. How you do those things, there's no moral value to it. Send them to public school, send them to private school, homeschool them. Doesn't matter. They have to get an education. Basecamp, Slack, and Reclaim are kind of like the power trio. They get used the most. That's what I like live in. But there are other ones I use more specifically for specific things, right? So like Grammarly, life-changing for copywriting. I would say it cuts my writing time down 30%. Because I'm not, like maniacally staring like, oh, did I spell it right? Get the grammar right. I'm just writing like I would talk and then letting Grammarly edit it. That's been extremely life-changing. I also, and this one's a little bit of a cheat, but I use AnyWord, which is an AI writer, for things that are just kind of like stupid little writing assignments. Like if I need to come up with an editorial promo for a blog post, I'll use AnyWord to generate that. Which it's just like an AI writer, very similar to Jarvis. It's just cheaper than Jarvis. And I mean, Zoom, obviously, like everybody's using some type of WebEx at this point. Zoom is my chosen one, mostly because I understand it and I don't want to learn a new tool. When somebody sends me a Google Hangouts link, I'm like, no, please. Same thing when somebody's like sends me a GoToMeeting. I'm actually surprised GoToMeeting hasn't died at this point because I think they are particularly bad. Sorry, GoToMeeting. Trello used to be in my powerhouse, but now I use a plugin called Tracked for Basecamp, and it does basically the same thing, and I'm keeping it all in one place. But I think, depending on what you do and what your team uses, Trello and Basecamp for me are very like, one is not better than the other. It's just kind of whatever you need. Same thing with like Atlassian and Jira. It very depends on like what your org is focused on, but those three are kind of like, in my opinion, the powerhouses of project management, time management, scheduling. I use Loomly for social media. I don't hate or love it. Their mobile app isn't amazing, but I can use the mobile app to post. I used to use Hootsuite. Their pricing just got really ridiculous, but I think they have the best mobile app, especially for creating drafts on the fly. I actually really, really liked Albert, which I tried for a little while, but their mobile app was terrible. And for me, that's a deal breaker. Like I couldn't I couldn't create and draft a post from mobile, which for me, inspiration strikes when it strikes, right? So I'm very big on habitually writing every single day, but sometimes you're just like, you're driving and you're like, oh my God, I have something I need to say, I need to get it out. And that you got to have a place to put it to save it for later. And Albert didn't work for that. I use HubSpot as my CRM. Again, neither love nor hate them. I think their pricing is insane. I don't know what sane person is buying from them. I have their like starter package. We are already outgrowing it in 2 out of 3 orgs. I'm definitely like, I am on the precipice of having to pick a new CRM. I will not use Salesforce again ever in my life. So I don't know if somebody's watching this and they're like, I have a great CRM for you. You know, you can message me on LinkedIn. Let me know what you got. But we are outgrowing HubSpot. I've used ActiveCampaign in the past. I didn't hate it, but I didn't find their user interface intuitive. The thing that I like about HubSpot is that I find it very intuitive and they have great documentation and good support. But even with those things, I do not think they're worth what they charge. I'm sorry, HubSpot. You got to create some type of mid-tier for startups that doesn't require going through an incubator. So they do have a startup program, but you have to be in an incubator to qualify. And there's just so many small businesses out there like me and startups like me that can't afford your pricing and would love to work with you, but you got to create some type of system for scaling. Which is one thing I love about like Reclaim's free. And I know you guys are going to a paid model eventually. But I hope you'll always keep some type of free tier, because the ability to scale up with companies, like it is really, really hard to sell into a successful organization. It's hard, it takes work. Selling to a startup, especially if you offer it for free, is easy. And you're hedging your bets, right? So like if startups are successful, they can pay you a whole bunch of money later. And if they're not, you know, you threw away whatever your cost on your software is, big deal. You are already paying most of it probably. So create those kind of like buckets so people can grow with you. That's hugely important for any of these productivity softwares, because very few people go from small business with no income to mega $1 million company overnight. It's like real unusual. And that's how some of these companies, their pricing plans are packaged. It's like either you can be on free or you got to pay us $1,000 a month. And that's like, who did your pricing strategy? I need to talk to them. And then I'm like looking at my computer to see what else I use. I use Linktree a lot. For graphics, Canva. Anybody out there? Like I used to spend hours of my day in Photoshop and Figma. And now I use my graphic design team to create all the elements in Figma and Photoshop, and they do an amazing job. And then when I need to create something on the fly, I do it in Canva in 2 minutes. I cannot enough say that Canva is the best tool for graphic design out there. I will say that even over like professional graphic design tools, if you're at a place where you're like, I have to choose between Canva and Photoshop, choose Canva. For one, it's free, and the paid is like $120 a year and you get 5 seats. Like unbeatable pricing, super easy to use. They now have a social scheduler. Like that's, I don't use it because I'm plugged in. Like I've been using Loomly for a year and a half now. So I have a lot of scheduled posts in it, but like incredible that you can schedule right to socials from it. And last but not least, LastPass, which is my like login, like my password collector. Admittedly, I used to be a security nightmare. My password for everything was the same. Sorry, every IT person I've ever worked with. LastPass was life-changing for me. Like I generate passwords that are really hard to ever hack, and then I have one master password that gets me into everything, which is not anything somebody could guess. And I can share those logins with my teammates. So we have a lot of collaboration that happens, especially on social media. And I can just send somebody the login, and that's that's been life changing. And obviously Reclaim. This one's just top of mind right now. I don't know if it's the best I ever received, but a couple of years ago, a mentor of mine told me that I had the power to do incredible things, but that I had to stop taking care of adults like they were children in order to do that. And that I could never realize my potential while I was carrying everyone on my back. And that was the best advice for me personally at that time, because as soon as I put it into action, my life changed. I'm a yes person. If you message me and you tell me that you need help, I cannot tell you no. I can't. Like, I'm not capable of leaving someone hurting. But I had to stop feeling accountable for other adults. It's not my job to be everybody's mom. And I can make a bigger difference. I can make more impact, a larger impact, a deeper impact by doing things like Coven Cloud and making money and spending it philanthropically than I can by carrying people who are capable of being self-sufficient through life. And, you know, you see those signs at the parks that say don't feed the wildlife. It's that way with people too, which is not me telling you not to help people, because you should. If you can help somebody, you always should, every single time. What you give comes back to you tenfold, and I believe that wholeheartedly, but you cannot make yourself accountable for other people's pain. It's not yours. And I have a bad habit of carrying other people's pain in, like, around with me in my body. And I had to learn that lesson. And at the time, no one in my life had the balls to call me out on it. You know, like, this was the first person, I think 4 years ago, that someone was like, honey, like, your friends are not your responsibility. You're almost 30 years old. And, you know, like, now I'm 33 and I can proudly say that I am not paying anyone else's mortgage. So that for me was the best advice. My last boss, Matt Levine over at Cashfly, told me to make small bets and double down on what works. And I think from a business perspective, that's one of the best pieces of advice that I've gotten. So that's another one that, like, was really powerful. Like, you can tell I don't have all my eggs in one basket.